Stripping Floors Part 2, Preparing to Strip Floors. In this section you will learn how to prepare your equipment, supplies, and the floor itself for stripping. Stripping is a process that involves the complete removal of all finish and sealer from a floor. Before going into detail, let's look at an overview of the steps used in stripping. The overall process is pretty simple. There are four main steps: prepare, strip, rinse, and inspect. To prepare, you will need to gather together all the equipment and supplies you will need. You will also need to set out warning signs and walk-off mats and prepare your stripping and rinse solutions. You will also need to prepare the floor for stripping. This includes removing furniture from the area and taking a few steps to prevent your stripping work from spilling over into other areas. At this stage, you might also have to do some preliminary edge work. In the stripping step, you will apply, machine scrub, and then pick up the stripper. You may also have to use some special techniques to remove built-up finish from edges and other hard-to-reach spots. Sometimes you have to repeat the stripping step more than once. The rinse step involves rinsing the floor with both a neutralizer and plain water until no chemicals are present. The final step is learning to inspect and judge your work. It can often be difficult to judge how effectively you have stripped the floor until it dries. In the upcoming slides, we will look at each of these steps in more detail. Here are the major pieces of equipment and supplies you will need for stripping. You will need some basic cleaning equipment: an untreated dust mop, 3 mops and buckets. 1 mop and bucket will be used for stripping solution, another for neutralizer rinse. The third one will be for the final water rinse. If an auto scrubber is used, it can take the place of the third bucket with the water rinse. In addition to the basic cleaning equipment mentioned, you will need some floor scrubbing equipment. A standard speed floor machine with either a black High Pro stripping pad or a stripping brush will be needed to scrub the floor after stripping solution is applied. Stripping brushes can be reused for numerous jobs and are less costly in the long run if properly cared for. In some areas, splash guards are available. These fit over and around the outside of the floor machine to decrease the risk of splashing. Standard speed machines operate in a side-to-side fashion and should not be confused with high-speed burnishers, which operate in a forward and backward fashion. Using a burnisher for scrubbing or stripping can damage the floor, create a real mess, and damage the machine. Standard speed floor machines run at 175 revolutions per minute. You might run across floor machines that operate in a side-to-side fashion, but run at 300 RPMs or more. High-speed machines like this are designed solely for spray buffing and will fling lots of stripper on walls and furniture. Review question 1. If you aren't using a scrubber, how many mops and buckets do you need for stripping a floor? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, or D, 4? That's correct. You need 3 mops and buckets for stripping if you don't use a scrubber. If you were using a scrubber, you would only need 2. You will need 2 chemicals for stripping and possibly a third one. You will need a stripping chemical, which is usually just called stripper. The stripper we use is Hilliard PowerStrip. Read label directions before using it or any other stripper. The strippers we use are non-ammoniated strippers intended to be used for most resilient tile floors in conjunction with machine stripping. Not all strippers are the same, so read the label directions. Use only strippers authorized for use in our department. You will also need a neutralizing chemical. The neutralizer we use is Hilliard Arsenal number 18 neutralizer. In the past, we have also used Hilliard Nutririnse, so you may come across it. In the past, we have also used vinegar as a neutralizer, but we are trying to discontinue this practice as it is rather inefficient and involves too much guesswork. Using vinegar can also create a bad smell, especially when used strong enough to neutralize the strong solution of stripper that we use. You may possibly also need a chemical defoamer to prevent excessive foaming in the wet vac or scrubber. Hilliard PowerStrip is a low foaming stripper, so it is unlikely you will need defoamer in most cases. We generally use either a scrubber or wet vac to pick up the various stripping and rinse solutions that we will put on the floors. Wet vacs will work better in small areas where a scrubber cannot go. In areas large enough to accommodate them, scrubbers have the advantage of being able to hold the final clean water rinse solution and thereby eliminate the need for one of the mops and buckets. A long-handled squeegee can be needed to pull liquids out of hard-to-reach spots so you can suck them up with your machine. To prevent stripping solution going where you don't want it to go, you may need various flow control items. A walk-off mat of some kind is needed so that your shoes don't transfer stripper to areas not being stripped. If nothing else, use rags for a walk-off mat. Rags can also be used to block unwanted flow of stripping solution and to wipe up accidental splashes before they cause too much damage. Use regular cotton rags for this purpose, not microfiber rags. Duct or masking tape is also used to help create barriers and cut lines. A long-handled squeegee is also often useful to quickly remove stripper away from an area. The long-handled squeegee is also used to pull stripping and rinse solutions away from edges and hard-to-reach spots so that the wet vac or auto scrubber can suck the liquid up. One problem you are likely to encounter in many areas is built-up dirt and finish, especially in corners and along floor edges. A doodlebug and pad is designed to help with this problem. Baseboard stripping chemical, usually stripper in a gel or foam form designed to stick to vertical surfaces, is helpful, especially in removing finish from vertical surfaces like baseboards or where you just need to strip on a small area. Before using baseboard stripper or any concentrated stripping product, you will want to test it first in an out-of-sight area to see if it discolors floor tiles. Scrapers are used to remove excessive layers of built-up finish and are especially useful in getting into corners and along edges. Scrapers come in a variety of sizes. In some cases where a lot of scraping is needed, you will want a long-handled scraper to make the job easier. You can use a long-handled scraper from a standing position. Finally, let's not forget about safety. There are several pieces of personal protective equipment, or PPE for short, that you may need. As always when it comes to PPE, remember that your first choice should always be to find a way to do a job that eliminates a hazard. If the hazard cannot be eliminated, then use PPE. Your shoes should be the ones described in our footwear policy. They should be free of holes and made of material like leather or vinyl, which will deflect a spill. The last thing you want is to spill undiluted stripper on your shoe and have it soak in. Remember, stripper is a caustic chemical which will cause skin damage. Working all day with your foot soaking in a caustic chemical can cause skin problems. Your shoes must also have good treads. The treads should be properly designed so that liquids do not become trapped under the shoes. We can provide you with stripping boots that have pads on the bottom to decrease the risk of slipping if you care for them properly. However, many of our custodians have noted problems with the boots which you should be aware of. If stripper slurry is allowed to build up in the pad itself will become slippery. Walking in the boots in itself takes a little getting used to. You must remember to remove the boot whenever you walk out of the stripping area. Just wiping them on a walk-off mat will not remove stripping solution from them. Here are some more safety items you may need. Wear protective eyewear whenever there is a risk of splashing from either undiluted stripper or stripping solution. Undiluted stripper is very hazardous to your eyes. Only goggles give full protection from liquid splashes. To protect your hands when there is a risk of splashing or when you are working closely with the stripper, wear rubber or other protective gloves. Disposable gloves break too easily when using a scrubbing pad or scraper, so they are not appropriate for some stripping task. Use thicker gloves. If you will be on your knees for long, use knee pads. Signage to warn or remind other people of the floor hazard you have created are necessary. Signs like this that warn people of the nature and special hazards of the work you are doing are more effective than a caution wet floor sign. You can get the special floor work in progress sign by asking your supervisor. Once you have your equipment and supplies gathered together, you can mix your stripping solution. We generally mix our stripper with equal parts water and stripper. We have found this ratio works well with the methods we use. The stripper we use is designed to work with cold water. Vapors from stripper can act as a respiratory irritant. Using hot water can increase the amount of irritating vapors given off by the stripper. Stripper is meant only to be used with adequate ventilation. Whenever you pour the stripper into the bucket, there is a chance the stripper can splash onto you, so you have to take some steps to minimize the hazard. Remember, stripper is extremely hazardous to your eyes. First, put the water in the bucket. This decreases the likelihood of concentrated stripper splashing out of the bucket. Keep your hands and head away from the stripper as you pour it slowly into the water. Wearing gloves and protective eyewear is the surest way to avoid a hazardous splash. If you have trouble lifting and handling the 5-gallon bucket of stripper, if you are working in cramped conditions, or if there are other factors which increase the risk of splashing, wearing protective gloves and goggles are a must. Review question 2. Should stripper be mixed with hot water or cold water? A. Hot water. B. Cold water. That's right, stripper should be mixed with cold water in order to avoid putting too much irritating vapors into the air. Our stripper is designed to work with cold water. Stripper is a highly alkaline hazardous chemical and is moderately expensive, and so avoid making more stripping solution than you need. Generally speaking, 1 gallon of stripping solution is needed for every 300 square feet of floor. Here are some tips for estimating the size of a floor. First, remember that the area of a room is equal to its length times its width. Most floor tiles are 12 inches wide. If you count the floor tiles along the length and then count the floor tiles along the width of a room and then multiply those two numbers together, you'll come up with the size of the room. For example, if the width of the room was 20 tiles and the length was 30, then the room is 20 feet wide and 30 feet long. 20 times 30 is 600, so the room is 600 square feet. 1 gallon of stripping solution will strip 300 square feet, and so, to strip 600 square feet, you will need about 2 gallons of stripping solution. Since half the solution is water and half is stripper, put 1 gallon of water in your bucket and then add the same amount of stripper to the water. Another way to estimate room size is to remember that a 10-foot by 10-foot section is 100 square feet. You can then imagine how many 10-foot by 10-foot sections are in a room. Estimating room size may seem difficult at first, but if you take the time to calculate room size a few times, you will become quite good at estimating the area. Another thing to remember is that it is very easy to make more stripping solution. Mop buckets usually hold between 3 to 4 gallons when full. Overfilling your mop bucket can lead to solution splashing out of the bucket and making a mess, so don't overfill your bucket. 3 gallons is probably all you really want to fill your bucket up to. It is very easy to make more stripping solution, so overfilling does not pay off. If the solution splashes out of the bucket and sets too long on the floor, it can cause damage to the floor tile or tile adhesive. Clean up accidental spills immediately. After mixing your stripper, you will want to prepare your neutralizer solution. You will need about the same amount of neutralizing solution as the stripping solution you made. If you are using the Hilliard Arsenal number 18 neutralizer, mixing is easy. Just use the Arsenal Junior dispenser as you do for other Hilliard Arsenal chemicals. If you are using Hilliard NutriRinse, mix 4 ounces of NutriRinse for every gallon of water you use. There is no need to remember this since the mixing directions can be found on the label. Remember, always put the water in the bucket first. Using vinegar as a rinse involves guesswork and is not recommended. If you use it too strong, you will create a bad smell and will make the surface of the floor too acidic, which will affect how well your finish goes down and how well it lasts. However, if you use the vinegar too weak, it won't neutralize the stripper. If you must for some reason use vinegar for your rinse, try mixing it at 4 ounces per gallon. You will need to remember this. Equipment safety. Previous experience and/or training with buffers, wet vacs, and scrubbers is needed in floor stripping. If you have little or no experience with this equipment, please let your supervisor or a trainer know. We have training material you can review, and we can provide hands-on training. Learning how to run this equipment on a floor slippery with a hazardous chemical is not a good idea. When handling stripping equipment, practice good electrical and equipment safety. Inspect cords, plugs, squeegees, and other equipment parts before you start. Keep electrical cords out of the path of the machine. Unplug the machine by grasping the plug, not by yanking on the cord. Turn off and unplug machines before making any adjustments. We've got all our equipment and supplies prepared, so it is time to start working in the area. First, we want to clear the floor space where we will be stripping. Remove any relatively lightweight furniture from the room. Things we don't move include full filing cabinets, soda machines, and other heavy items. We do generally remove chairs, student desks, trash cans, throw rugs, and tables. Take note of where the items you remove are supposed to go as you remove them. Place the items that you move neatly in an area so that normal building operations are not interrupted and walkways remain open. Get help moving larger items or use a dolly. With the floor cleared, you will want to remove excessive soils from the floor. Run a dust mop over the entire area that you're going to strip. Next, inspect the edges and corners. If they have built up dirt and wax in them, you can use a scraper to clear away the excess soil and wax. Sometimes a little plain water helps with scraping off excess soil. If there is excessive wax to be removed, a baseboard stripper will help dissolve it and make it easy to scrape off. If the floor has gum, tape, or stickers on it, remove them with your scraper. This is also a good time to work on baseboards if they have lots of built-up dirt or wax on them. We don't want stripper destroying floor finishes in areas that we aren't stripping. Applying stripper in a controlled manner is the primary way to prevent the stripper from going where it shouldn't. In many rooms, just being careful in applying the stripper is the only method of control that will be needed. The presence of many doorways, furniture, or other conditions can make more control desirable. Mats or rags can be placed in areas where you don't want the floor machine to fling the stripper. Set up a walk-off mat to help prevent your shoes from accidentally spreading stripper. Even with rags and mats in place, you will need to check frequently for runoff as you work, especially on uneven floors. Making cut lines is another way to make sure the stripper only goes where we want it. We will look at making cut lines in the next slide. Cut lines are typically made along tile seams or in a doorway. One way to make a cut line is to use rags, mats, or even plastic liners. The rags or plastic liners can be stuffed under a door to prevent the finish from flowing under the door. Tape can also be used to make a cut line, either all by itself or together with a rag, mat, or plastic liner. Either duct tape or some masking tape can be used. Duct tape makes a great seal to the floor but can lead to some problems. Sometimes it sticks to the floor so well that the floor tile gets pulled up when the tape is pulled up. Duct tape can also leave adhesive behind on the floor, which can be difficult to remove. Masking tape does not have these problems. If the floor is flooded for too long, however, the stripper will work its way under the masking tape faster than it would under duct tape. As noted in the previous slide, the primary method for preventing the stripper from flowing where it shouldn't is to apply it in a controlled manner. If you slop stripper down haphazardly, it won't make a difference what you have made your cut line with. We'll look at the methods for applying stripper in a controlled manner in the next few slides. With proper application methods, it is possible to make good cut lines without tape, rags, or other supplies. End of Part 2. In Part 3, you will learn how to apply the stripper, how to rinse the floor, and how to inspect your work.